One of the pieces that makes the Albright Institute what it is the presence of alumni coming back to share their stories with you. And you will begin with quite a powerful one this morning. So let me dial back and talk about the Albright Institute for Global Affairs. It was envisioned as a way to honor the secretary on her 50th reunion to Wellesley College. Our outgoing president, Diana Chapman Walsh, summoned a very small group of trustees and senior staff and a few others. I was in that group of a few others. And we wrote a proposal that was essentially designed to produce global leaders in every country around the world. It was designed to honor the life and the spirit of Madeleine Albright. And she has been very hands-on in its design. And she has been very hands-on in mentoring and assisting that leadership for each and every fellow. Now, what comes with that is an enormous expectation to be embodying the motto of the institution, not to be served, but to serve. Now, we talk about that a lot here at Wellesley. What we do in the Albright Institute is we make that possible. We make that possible both with the principles by which we have funded and founded this institute and in the ways that we stay with you during every step. So what Professor Metaxas and I will talk about this morning is how we have structured the institute this year. Because we are a nonpartisan institute, and we are challenged to be true to our principles this year in a way we have never been with the recent events in the world, from Brexit to the elections in the United States. And on November 9th, we set about, in conversation with Secretary Albright, to double down on really making sure that we believe our values and principles, and that we were reinforcing those in the design of this institute for this year. But the fundamental problem that we needed to address was what would remain and what we would need to change. And what we know is a foundational principle to the Institute is you. As you know, we have an enormously selective process. As I said to those of you who could come to our orientation, if you're here to build your resume or your career, we wintered you out pretty quickly. If you were here for the intrinsic meaning and opportunity of the long arc of considering a liberal arts perspective to global affairs, you made it into the room. And what I want to say is that there are 16 seniors, there are 24 juniors. It was very hard to be a senior and get in this room. I want to acknowledge that some of you reapplied. Lots of credit for that. Because if it didn't work out in your junior year, you figured it out and you came back and you made a better case and you got in the room. There are 27 different majors out of the 40 of you. So you truly do represent the liberal arts. We have anthropology, we have art history, we have theater studies, we have women's studies, and everything in the middle. We have 29 US citizens, but 10 of those have dual citizenship. We have 11 international students. And we have students anywhere from Albania to Kenya to Nigeria to Venezuela. So to some extent, you are yourself a living, learning laboratory. We could leave you alone in a room, and amazing things would happen over the course of the next month. And what you will bring is being a co-creator, a full partner with us. This is not about us imparting knowledge to you. This is about all of us sharing knowledge with each other and finding your own voice and your own story in that. So you know that we have enormously high expectations of you, and we know that we consider you full partners in the enterprise. Now, this is an institute that's in the United States, so One of the things that we drew on when we were thinking about a Global Affairs Institute was an American psychologist and philosopher and educator, John Dewey. John Dewey talked about the fact that interest in all learning from all contexts of life is an essential moral interest. That's about as wide open as you can be. The openness to the world is the foundation of all education. What you will find in our conversations is that we are reinforcing and doubling down on the importance of the liberal arts at a time when the liberal arts are being challenged to be more career-oriented and more extrinsically valued. In this room and over the course of this month, we know that you will learn as much from imaginative literature and from imagination as you learn from something that is hardcore policy oriented. And this is the conversation that we are inviting you into. Our own faculty are the stewards of their professions. You will hear from Brian Jayden talking about science, talking about understanding the physical body as a way of providing cures. You'll hear from Larry Rosenwald about the difference between a good propaganda piece and true literature. You hear from Charlene Galarno about an ethic of thinking about global health. These are just a few, and we'll go through the program. But what each of them will do, in addition to teaching their discipline, is they will encourage a kind of cross-disciplinary thinking that we believe is required in order to truly be a leader. Yes, you have to know your own field in great depth, but you also have to know how to learn the other fundamental pieces. And then you will be also challenged by some of the towering architects of our time. One of whom you'll hear from this morning, Dame Amelia Fawcett. One of whom you'll spend several days with, the first female elected president of Kosovo, President Yayaga. And all the way in between. And again, we will go through the schedule with you. But as importantly, you will learn from each other. Because this institute is about collective action over individual achievement and accomplishment. I'm going to say that again because it's big. And it's not something that we do a lot at Wellesley, but it is something that we do here. And it can feel awkward, it can feel uncomfortable, and I invite you to fully express those feelings. It's about collective action over individual achievement. It is about a self-discipline, an ethic of accountability and responsibility. And so what does that mean, and why do we structure it? It means from the simplest little thing, be on time. We're going to start on time. Be prepared. I looked over all of those readings. I haven't read them all yet, but they're short and they're important because some people are going to be cold calling and you need to be ready. So be on time, be prepared. But more importantly, push yourself out of your comfort zone. Set some personal goals for yourself today. You don't have to tell them to anyone, but set some personal goals. Think about what you will contribute and how you will contribute. If you are the person who has always pushed your arm up into the sky and weighed in with your opinion, I encourage you to sit on your hand. And if you are the person who has always listened, I really encourage you to find your voice. And I want to talk to you a minute about finding your voice. I don't want you to find the voice you already know. I want you to find the one that's been whispering to you, or the one that you can just barely envision or touch. You aren't graded, and there's a reason that you're not graded. We are not here for the extrinsic. We are here to learn to truly inquire. And that's what I want you to focus on. That's what we want you to focus on, is move away from critical judgment to critical inquiry. Replace, I disagree with that, with I wonder why that person thinks and feels the way she or he does. And focus instead on asking questions rather than coming to opinions. This entire month is about asking questions. And it may be our hardest month ever, because I know I come to some of the issues we'll be talking about with a lot of opinions. So the rubber's going to meet the road here, for us and for you. So if your default has been to be great at critical reasoning, I really encourage you to replace that for this month with a sense of wondering why and how someone who feels fundamentally different about the world and has fundamentally different opinions has come to that opinion. And then to consider that that person may be right, and you in fact may be wrong. Consider this advice directly from Secretary Albright. By definition, learning means exploring areas of life and opinions with which you are not already familiar. Instead of choosing to read or listen only to people whose views make you the most comfortable, choose instead to study those who make you the most upset. Instead of surrounding yourself with friends whose experiences are similar to yours, reach out to classmates whose life stories are unknown. Instead of repeating over and over again the opinions you've expressed in the past, stop venting for a month. Ask yourself why you believe as you do, and submit your own conceptions of truth to the rigorous standards of critical thinking. Above all, she says, I ask you to understand that there's an enormous difference between entering into an argument for the purpose of winning and engaging in research and discussion for the purpose of stretching your mind and giving free rein to your conscience. This is what the Albright Institute is. We had the best teacher. We had the model and the example of her life, fully lived, out loud, in public. And it is around that example that we have been her students. So yes, we will talk about the long arc, the persistent chronic problems, lack of water, lack of food, disease, poverty, war, violence, governance structures that no longer work, the problems of developed countries, the problems of developing countries. And this year we will do it through the lens of some of the events that occurred in 2016. And it's in that spirit that we then begin and introduce the program to you today.
Thanks very much for this very inspiring introduction. And I can tell you that every bit that Joanne said is really true. I've been with the Institute as a faculty since the first year in 2010. And I always loved the interaction I had as a faculty member with the students. I found it extremely inspiring and giving me a real hope that the future is going to be better than what my generation managed to do. We messed up a few times, as you know. But we really feel extremely proud of what you have to offer. And you have to offer a lot of things. So, this is, as you know, the person whose name has been given to the Institute, and the beautiful quote Joanne read from her, I think, is right to the center of what we do here. So, let's go and see the overall theme that we have, as you know, because you selected the topics that you will eventually be working on. We looked at the effects of globalization on a variety of topics, and the topics that we chose come from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They're quite wide, there are 17 of those. We tried to focus on 3 and try to go in a little greater depth in these 3. So, all of these topics are particularly important. We chose the theme back in April because we had this hunch that talking about the effect of globalization should be important. And it was, I guess, an unpleasant surprise how much more important everything became.